All right, today we're diving into one of the most pivotal events in all of human history, the Second World War. And let me tell you, this wasn't just a war, it was a global firestorm that completely redrew the map and changed, well, pretty much everything about the world we live in today. 70 million. That is the estimated number of people who died. Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. It's a scale of destruction that's almost impossible to imagine. And it included soldiers, of course, but for the first time in modern history, an absolutely shocking number of civilians. A number that big just begs the question. How on earth did the world spiral into a disaster like this? Well, it wasn't just one single event, not one single spark. It was more like a perfect storm of simmering anger, economic desperation, and some brand new, really aggressive ideologies that have been brewing for years. Okay, so to really get how this all went down, we've got to rewind the clock. Back to the end of World War I, because that's really where the seeds for this next, even deadlier conflict were planted. It all kicks off with the Treaty of Versailles, right? It left Germany feeling completely humiliated. Then, boom, the Great Depression hits, and the global economy just collapses, leaving people everywhere feeling hopeless. This desperation, it was the perfect breeding ground for totalitarian regimes to pop up in Germany, Italy, and Japan, and they all had big plans for expansion. Meanwhile, the Western democracies, terrified of another war, tried a policy of appeasement, a strategy that, as we'll see, was a catastrophic failure. Now, at the very core of Nazi Germany's aggression was this one idea, Lebensraum. It literally means living space. Hitler's whole argument was that the German people needed more room to grow and that it was their destiny to take it from Eastern Europe. This single ideology became the justification for their entire war machine. So with the stage set like that, what started as a European problem quickly spiraled into a global catastrophe. It pulled in countries from every single continent and turned the world's oceans into massive battlegrounds. The first few years were just a blur of shocking speed from the Axis powers. After invading Poland in 1939, Germany's Blitzkrieg, their lightning war, just steamrolled France by 1940. It was unbelievable. Then in 1941, Hitler launches this massive surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. And then, all the way on the other side of the world, Japan attacks the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, pulling the last great superpower into the fight. President Roosevelt's famous words perfectly captured the shock and anger that just ripped through America. The attack on Pearl Harbor was the trigger that brought the entire industrial might of the United States into the conflict, transforming a European and Asian war into a truly global war. All right, so for 2 long, brutal years, the Axis powers just seemed unstoppable. It looks like they couldn't lose, but the tide was about to turn as the Allies finally started to chart a path to victory. 1942, that was the year it all started to change. This was the beginning of the end for the Axis. In the frozen, shattered city of Stalingrad, the Soviet army managed to stop the supposedly invincible German war machine in its tracks, a brutal, decisive defeat. And at the same time, way out in the Pacific, the U.S. Navy pulls off a critical victory at the Battle of Midway, crippling the Japanese fleet and ending its reign over the ocean. These 2 battles, fought thousands of miles apart, were the crucial turning points. From that point on, the Allies unleashed this relentless, multi-front assault. They invaded Italy in 1943, which led to Mussolini's downfall. Then came the big one, D-Day, the largest seaborne invasion in history, which opened up the Western Front. While the Allied forces pushed from the west, the Soviet Red Army closed in from the east. Squeezed from all sides, the Third Reich finally crumbled, and Germany surrendered in May of 1945. But even with the victory in Europe, the war wasn't over. The fighting in the Pacific was still raging. To avoid what would have been an incredibly bloody invasion of Japan, the United States made a world-changing and deeply controversial decision to use a new, terrifying weapon. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced Japan to surrender on September 2, 1945, finally bringing the Second World War to an end. So the fighting's over, but what was left behind? What did this unbelievable conflict actually leave in its wake? Well, its end wasn't just the end of a war. It was the birth of a brand new world, built right on top of the ashes of the old one. First and foremost, the unimaginable human cost. The numbers are almost too big to comprehend. And here's the key. For the first time in modern history,
civilian deaths far outnumbered military deaths. This fundamentally changed the nature of war. It wasn't just armies fighting armies anymore. It was war against entire populations.
And inside that massive tragedy is one of the absolute darkest chapters in human history, the Holocaust, the systematic, state-sponsored murder of 6 million Jewish people by the Nazi regime. It stands as a horrifying testament to the depths of human cruelty and a solemn reminder of why we can never, ever forget. The post-war world was completely redrawn. The United Nations was created, hoping to prevent a catastrophe like this from ever happening again. The old European empires crumbled, giving way to two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Their rivalry immediately kicked off the Cold War, sparking decolonization movements all over the globe and ushering in the new and terrifying reality of the nuclear age. And so, all of this leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? Was World War II the final horrifying lesson we needed against nationalism and tyranny? Or is it a stark warning of a tragedy that, if we're not vigilant, could one day be repeated? That is the fundamental question we are all still wrestling with today.